Hi guys, today I want to talk about The Silence of the Lambs, and this particular release here, which is an Image Entertainment release, a surround sound, beautiful release here in a form that I wish more LaserDisc would take actually. I think they're called Digipacks. It's kind of like a giant sort of like CD case. It's pretty interesting here. Silence of the Lambs is a brilliant, brilliant movie that I think has always stuck with me and I think is remembered so fondly because of the way it structures its story. Plus, of course, the incredible acting by Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. To me, I think a lot of thrillers of its type would focus largely on a hunter and prey type relationship with, say, Agent Jodie Starling being the hunter and the prey being probably either just Buffalo Bill or Hannibal Lecter on the loose, and building the relationship and the contrast and the connection between these characters in that form. And I think this works so incredibly well because Buffalo Bill, while being that which is hunted by the detective of the mystery element here, is not necessarily the focus. It is a story of the exploration and the growth of Jodie Foster's character, FBI agent in training, Clarice Starling, along with Buffalo Bill, and her really finding herself through this mystery and this chase of Buffalo Bill, and it's all connected. Both of their stories are really connected by the keystone that is Anthony Hopkins' character, and I really think that is what makes it work. There are a lot of connections, and you can see a lot of comparisons in this really interesting magnetism between the two main characters, between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling. You can really feel those characters exploring each other's stories, and one of the best elements really is their relationship. I think throughout the course of the movie, I really think that is the standout element, and it's interesting because that is really the vehicle through which the characters are explored and the vehicle through which progress is made within the main narrative, even though it actually isn't really the main narrative, isn't really the main objective, and it just works so beautifully well. And I think having those three characters, those 3 points of focus, is what really makes this work better than I think a lot of comparable works. And also because the way they use the differences between how Hannibal Lecter is used as a menacing, almost, I don't want to quite say villain in the movie, but also between that and the way Buffalo Bill is portrayed, and the point to where Buffalo Bill is actually used fairly sparingly throughout the movie up until the very end, and it's done really well because it keeps more of that mysterious element, and you're actually learning more about him through the discovery of his connections through Hannibal Lecter throughout the movie, rather than just him getting a lot of screen time. And when he does get screen time, then it's much more poignant, it's much more disturbing, and you really have a lot to think about the character before you even really get into a lot of scenes with the characters. Every time he is on screen, there's so much more behind what you're going into that scene thinking about than just the scene itself, and it really adds to it in so many ways. And he is really the I guess terrorizing factor to me until he's on the loose towards the end. Hannibal Lecter is actually a little more creepy and fascinating, and really just sort of draws you in and makes you want to learn more about his character, and he can be very disturbing in some ways, but really until he's on the loose, and even then to some extent, I really never, even as a fairly young child, I think I was 10, 11, maybe 12 at most when I first saw this, I never quite found him to be the terrifying character in this movie. I found him to be that barrier that was always between you and him, even as it sort of melted away, moving from, of course, within the facility in the beginning and having the clear plastic wall in between you, and then moving to the cage, and then of course being free. Even as those barriers were stripped away, he wasn't necessarily terrifying because you're seeing through the eyes of Clarice Starling. And I think I love that imagery too of how the barrier, the physical barrier between them, is slowly stripped away. So is the barrier between their characters as they grow to understand each other and sort of work off each other. As you peel away the layers of who these characters truly are, you see them get closer in a very interesting and distorted and kind of disturbing way that works really, really well, and that is, of course, a standout relationship. And what brings it all together are obviously the performances. I mean, everyone, even side characters, do an incredible job and play an important part in how this is pulled together. But I think overall, as amazing as Anthony Hopkins is in here, I mean, one of his, if not his best performance, and just truly spectacular, I think, and I think this is proven later on with people replacing her, Jodie Foster's role in many ways, obviously a role that was well rewarded and very well respected for reasons, because I think that is actually the main thing that keeps the movie from falling out of that category of a true classic. I think it's her performance that really brings it forward. I think most people think more of Hannibal Lecter's character right away when they think about the movie, and they think more about Anthony Hopkins. To me, I actually think about Jodie Foster first and foremost when I think about this movie, and to me that is the role that really drew me in, and just seeing her go through this movie is what just made the whole thing work for me, and incredibly fascinating. I think it was just perfect casting and an amazing, memorable performance that, even without being that character who is really the focus of some of the best cinematography in the movie, and I really think it's the visualization of the scenes around Hannibal Lecter's character, and not just the acting and performance, that really bring it to its full potential. I think even without the benefit of that being the absolute best in how the movie is portrayed visually, I think he really gets the brunt of the focus of that in many ways. I think even without that, I think she's so relatable and you can connect her in so many ways, and the connections between her and everyone else within the movie, particularly Hannibal Lecter, are really what makes you understand and explore all the different elements of the movie through her character, and of course it's all joined together with an incredible score that, again, is one of those things where if it had gone too far in one direction or the other, if it had been a little too trying to be a little too scary, a little too more like slasher movie in some of the elements, particularly when towards the end and when Hannibal Lecter is on the loose at one point, I think there's so many instances where the musical score could have gone a different direction and might have cheapened some of those moments, but it never did. It's truly fantastic from start to finish. Just an incredible movie that it's one of those things that I could talk about so many different elements of it for so long, but I really want to hear some of your experiences with this movie, and maybe in the comments go ahead and go a little more in depth with what you think of this movie, what really stands out to you the most in this movie. I'd love to hear from you guys, because this is truly a fantastic movie that is just an amazing thriller that has just enough of the sort of like crime-solving drama aspects to it, just enough of the horrifying aspects, just enough of each little part of the recipe that no one part is really overbearing. And I think the perfect balance of every character is given very purposeful screen time, and I think it's the issue, I think, with some later iterations of some adaptations of some of the later books into movie form later on. I think some of what was changed with the focus, like part of them being focused too much on Hannibal Lecter, I think kind of ruins the element in certain other stories. I think here the balance was perfect, and I think this was sort of a lightning in a bottle type thing with, as far as those novels being translated into film. I think this is one that was just kind of came out and was perfected, and I don't think will quite be mastered in the same way. Just an incredible movie that is amazing to have on LaserDisc, and there are lots more versions, of course, but looking at this one here, this is a really cool one to have. Good quality. I really enjoyed it. I found it to be an impressive way to watch the film here, and again, I really like this packaging, and I wish there was more. There aren't too many that came in this. I think it's mostly the Image Entertainment, and not even all their releases, just a handful of their releases, and I think most, if not all, I think the Muse discs come in this form also, but not too many, but it's pretty cool. So it has some disadvantages to where you can't really put anything around to protect the disc as well. You have to put over the whole thing, but yeah, pretty amazing, and of course a fantastic movie.